Now, from Atlanta News First, the issues that matter to you. This is On the Record.
Thank you very much for talking to us today. Thanks for going on the record.
It's my pleasure, Rick.
What is your role? How do you see it as Israel's Consul General to the Southeastern United States?
Well, I mean, being a Consul General, first of all, for those of you who don't really mean or know what it means, it actually means that I'm the highest ranking official representative of the State of Israel to the Southeast. Basically, we cover 7 states. We cover Georgia, of course. We cover North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Kentucky. So we're covering really important and interesting states. And the way I see it, and the way it should be, my role here is to empower the relationship between my country, between my people, the people of Israel, to the people living here in the Southeast, on all aspects of life, from the cultural aspect all the way to economical and, of course, national security. Everything is important, and that's what I'm here for.
You take on this assignment at a very difficult time, 3 years since the October 7th terror attacks on your country. What has been achieved since that horrific day?
Well, you know, being Israeli, that axiom is really true all the time, because it's always difficult. Always things are happening in the region. We live in a really, really turbulent region, the Middle East. We're surrounded by a lot of, enemy states. We're surrounded by the fundamentalist Islam mentality. It's extremely dangerous to us. And after October 7th, definitely things actually turned worse. Because not only that we had Palestinian terrorists, thousands of them crossing into the border and murdering, raping, and doing atrocities to innocent civilians, but we see how the international community doesn't do what they need to do in order to prevent it from ever happening again. And actually what we see now, we see efforts from all sorts of countries in Europe and elsewhere trying to, give the Palestinian people a present, a nice present. You kill Jews, you get a country. Now, what kind of a crazy world we live in? It's actually atrocious to me that when people butcher innocent individuals, they get a gift. They get the free country. And mind you, we disengaged from Gaza in 2005, hoping that, the Palestinians will choose, the road for peace. And they didn't. All they brought us was death and more death. And this is, the complex time we live in.
So complex, here we go. The Associated Press put out a poll just recently, this is from September, that says that about half of Americans believe that Israel's military response has, quote, gone too far. A Quinnipiac University poll from September found that less than half of American voters, 47%, believe that support for Israel is in the national interests of the United States. And a poll from August 2025, the YouGov poll, reported that 78% of Americans want an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. I mean, public opinion here when it comes to Israel is taking a major hit.
Well, first of all, when you look into polls, you need to understand what you're reading, because polls usually represent the positions of the people who ordered them. Let's investigate the questions. What were the questions that people were asked? Because you can ask the same questions on so many ways that you can get different answers and different, measuring of whatever people sentiments might be towards Israel, towards another topic. That doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the strong support that Israel is getting from the American people is something that it's unmeasurable. Israel is the bastion of democracy in the region of the Middle East. Israel is the first in this huge battle that fundamentalist Islam is waging against the Western culture. And if, heavens forbid, if Israel falls, America might fall afterwards. And I think people here in the U.S. understand that the values that we share is something that is unshared in the region that we live in. And that's why the U.S. and its people are doing whatever they can to help us and to support us. And this is something we mustn't forget. And no matter what poll you'll do, you won't be able to change that mere fact. And as I said, in regards to the military activities in Gaza, you're asking the wrong, person that question. You should ask Hamas. You should ask them, why are you hiding behind civilians? Why are you using your women and children to get them killed? They're doing it on purpose. And this is something we need to remind people, the context and what we see there. This is actually not because we're doing it on purpose or not because this is our intent. No, it's because they're doing it in order to create this huge image of a lot of people dying because of Israel. Now, after October 7, I was assigned as a liaison with the IDF in their command and control centers, in their bunkers. And I was there almost until a week before I came to Atlanta. That was about 2 months ago. And I witnessed and saw all of our activities that we did in Gaza. And I can tell you that we didn't do anything on purpose to intentionally kill innocent individuals. Before every strike, we had a legal team from the IDF sitting, discussing, okay, what should we do? Can we attack? Can we not attack? On so many cases, we decided, hey, we're not going to attack because, collateral damage, international humanitarian law, we can violate that. On some occasions, we said we have to go. And some mistakes happen. Sadly, mistakes happen. This is a war. At the end of the day, let's not forget this is a war, and our enemy is atrocious. Not just because he's atrocious to us. He's atrocious to his own people. He doesn't care that he kills people, especially his own. And that's what actually they encourage us to do. That's why behind every senior terrorist, he has an entourage of about 20 people, women and children, just being pushed violently to go and stand next to him. So if we'll take him out, hopefully they're hoping that we'll take as many civilians as possible. And now show me what country, what military would not retaliate against an enemy who committed such atrocious activities as Hamas did to us.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but still there seems to be a public relations issue for Israel right now. Not just here, but globally. Israel is more isolated, it seems, on the world stage than perhaps at any time in its short history. And going around and talking to Americans here in Metro Atlanta, you're hearing things, criticism that's leveled towards Israel from people who are normally allies of the State of Israel, but who have problems with the way Israel is conducting itself in this war against the terrorists in Gaza. So your job, I think partly, is to come over here and to try to change people's minds or let them know the truth as you see it. So what do you say to those Americans here in Metro Atlanta and elsewhere who are troubled by what Israel is doing and who want to see this come to an end?
The issue that you just mentioned in regards of our PR, definitely that's something we're trying to tackle. At the end of the day, we do not exist on the same plane of values as our adversaries. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they'll do whatever they can in order to present us in a negative way. That's why we have all sorts of stories coming out there portraying Israel as a terrible thing, starvation and whatnot. And actually, the main problem is the media that is helping the Hamas, terrorists, to show these type of stories. Because you have cases where the New York Times, had an amazing big picture of a poor, baby saying that this Muhammad Matuk was his name. Look at this baby, he's starving to death, all because of Israel. Actually, that's not the case. They believe whatever Hamas told them, and they publish it without checking, without validating, and they're not the only ones. And then we expose that lie, saying actually this boy is suffering from a genetic disorder, and he's not suffering from any starvation. The New York Times had to apologize. Same thing, Time Magazine. They showed the big picture of, poor Palestinians with empty pots, looking and searching for food. And then we had actually a picture taken of that event from afar. You see that it was staged. The problem is that a lot of those media outlets are not doing their jobs. They're either mediocre or they're doing it on purpose. I don't know. I don't care. I used to be the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we caught media outlets here and there red-handed lying on purpose. On purpose lying. And whenever we challenge them on that, they either blamed us for being too, some of them were blatant anti-Semites saying, you're damn Jews always chasing us. Some said, we don't care, do what you want. See, the problem is that people need to understand the complexity of the story. Once you're fighting against an adversary who do not believe in the same values and do not share the same values with you, and they're lying and stealing and cheating, and they're, as I said, using media in order to portray that messaging, it's really difficult to fight against. No matter how good your PR is, once you see an image, an 11-second video on TikTok portraying poor whatever people getting whatever, you don't really have the entire context. And that's what they're doing. They know exactly what makes Westerners think. They know Americans always root for the underdog, and they know that you guys are not really investing all of your efforts in order to understand all the history and all the context in the region. And that's why you swallow everything hook, line, and sinker without asking tough questions. And that's the problem. And no matter how good our PR is, it's going to be difficult to beat. Because in order for you to understand the story, I need to take at least 20 minutes of your time to give you the context, give you everything you need. They don't give a shit. They do it 10 seconds and that's it.
There are some people who equate criticism directed at Israel as anti-Semitism. In your mind, is it possible to separate the two? Or do people who criticize Israel, are they also criticizing the Jewish people? Are they also conveying anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic thoughts?
So what we see nowadays is people utilizing their own anti-Semitical beliefs as legitimate guise to criticize Israel. Criticism is fine. We're a democracy. We live in criticism. We're Jews. We understand criticism. It's fine. But when this criticism crosses the line, and the line crossed, let's give you two examples. The first example is when people say they're anti-Zionists. When someone says he's an anti-Zionist, it means he's an anti-Semite. Why? It's a simple reason. Zionism means the right of self-determination of the Jewish people. It means the return of the Jewish people to their Jewish homeland, Zion, Israel. Now, when they say I'm anti-Zionist, it means that they're anti the right of the Jewish people to have their own right of self-determination. Now, the right of self-determination, it's his natural historical right that every people in this world deserves to have. Now, why does the Jewish people is not allowed to have its own right of self-determination? So when someone comes out and says he's an anti-Zionist because he criticizes Israel here and there, actually he's an anti-Semite. Another example is BDS. When people support the BDS movement, actually the same thing. You're basically saying that Israel is the only, entity to blame for whatever's happening in the region, in the Middle East. And that's terrible, because that's a lie. People said that Israel was the source of all problems in the Middle East. Actually, the Arab Spring, so-called, proved that that's not the case. Not to mention the civil war in Syria. Civil war in Syria took more than 10 years. 500,000 civilians died on the civil war. That didn't have anything to do with Israel. Israel is the only entity that brings stability to the region. Because of Israel, you have a lot of Christian and other faiths minorities living in peace in the boundaries of Israel. What's happening outside of Israel, that's a completely different story. Israel is the only safe place for everyone in the Middle East.
We have seen anti-Semitism on the rise here in Georgia and across the country. Way before October 7th, we've been reporting on a rise in anti-Semitic incidents for years. And now, of course, I think that it's gotten even worse since the terror attacks. What is your plan? What advice would you have for leaders around this area as far as combating anti-Semitism?
Anti-Semitism has no place in this world. In ways, it only brought, I would say, destruction, death, and negative impact, not just on the Jewish community, but on all communities. The only way to fight against it is through education and through legislation. Because once the elected officials understand that we need to penalize those who commit anti-Semitical acts, then they'll understand that there's a price. Sadly, I can't change people's hearts and minds. If someone is born an anti-Semite and he's not willing to reconsider his beliefs through education and through whatnot, I can't do anything against it. But if through education at a young age people understand that there's no difference if you're a Jew, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Christian, if you're white or African American, doesn't matter. We're people. And all people are the same and everyone has their rights. And you can't degrade or look at someone in a weird way because he's whatever. That doesn't matter. That comes through education. And if education fails, then legislation needs to come. And one of those I would say, legislative acts are through the IRA definition of what is anti-Semitism. That's the big question. Now, everything is political. As I said, since our adversaries, they're playing a dirty trick. They're not playing according to the rules of the game. They find whatever ways they can in order to blacklist and delegitimize Israel's right to exist by trying to change educational about Holocaust. When people say, actually, the Holocaust, a lot of minorities were murdered. That's not the Holocaust. And when they try to change the definition of anti-Semitism, that it's okay to criticize Israel, it's okay to criticize Israel, but it's not okay to support BDS, and it's definitely not okay to be an anti-Zionist, because that's anti-Semitism. That's where legislation should come into play.
Okay, so had you spent any time in Atlanta before assuming this post?
I have to admit, no. I was always fascinated about this, about Atlanta and the region itself.
In what sense?
I'm a career diplomat for the past 18 years. I was all over the world. I was in Angola for a couple of months. I was in Russia for 3 years. It wasn't cold enough for me there, so I was shipped to Ottawa for another 3 years to, try to freeze me a bit more. And then I was in Israel for a year being the deputy spokesperson, then headed back to Los Angeles. So I was in the West Coast. I was in charge of 7 states, and that was COVID, not an easy time. And all those years, I heard so many great things about Atlanta, about the Southern hospitality, about the warmth of the people. And I have to admit, I feel at home, in a good way. People are warm, people are nice, people are genuine here, and I find it so amazing. So definitely, I'm so happy to be here.
Did your predecessor, who left a big mark here, you have big shoes to fill with Anat, did she prepare you for this role at all? What advice did she give you?
So first of all, I look good on high heels, so I was told. Anat did an amazing job for the past 6 years, and I think, a diplomatic role is like a race. It's like a leeway race where you pass the baton to the next runner. And when I got the baton from Anat, she made an amazing run. She did amazing things here. And when I took that baton, I said, good, now I'm going to run as fast as I can, and I'm going to increase my speed. And that's exactly what's going to happen now. She cleared a lot of the things that needed to be cleared in regards of the relations with important people of interest, and made a lot of the work for me a bit easier, because I only need to continue from where she left and then take it to other and new avenues. So yes, definitely she deserves a lot of the credit.
Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. Best of luck in your new job, and to your family as well as you settle here in Atlanta.
Thank you, Rick.